First, I missed you. I haven't been up here in this gallery for 4 weeks. It's sort of cold turkey. But second, when I heard the president a few hours ago, I couldn't believe my ears. And I thought that it needed a little bit of rebutting. So what about last night? Look, last night was a really good night for Democrats. And what happened last night doesn't bode well for President Trump and Republicans in 2020 and beyond. Obviously, we took back the House. That's far and away the most significant change. There's now a check on Donald Trump, and that is great news for America. I want to praise all of the candidates, particularly the many women who did a great job. I want to praise Leader Pelosi. She did a wonderful job in trying and succeeding in creating a majority once again. We also did very well in governorships. We picked up 7, including Kansas and Wisconsin. Wisconsin was especially sweet. And we did great in state legislatures where we picked up large numbers of legislative seats. Meanwhile, Republicans lost women, minorities, and suburban voters across the country that by such margins that they should worry every Republican candidate in 2020 and President Trump. But I'd like to talk about what happened in the Senate, where some pundits and President Trump are claiming more of the, what I want to do is rebut the fact that what happened in the Senate is equal or even close to equal to the losses that the president and the Republicans suffered elsewhere. Because nothing can be further from the truth. The president never seems to let reality get in the way of a good story. But when the president says that what happened in the Senate more than undoes the losses they suffered across the board elsewhere, he's delusional. Now, I won't mince words. It hurts to lose such talent and accomplished senators, dear friends like Claire McCaskill, Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Donnelly. The Senate, their states, and the country will miss them dearly and will be the lesser for their absence. But when you look at the map that Senate Democrats were facing in 2018, Democrats did much better than most expected, and President Trump did a lot worse than many predicted. If you had said a year ago, when many were saying Democrats could well drop below the magic 40 number in the Senate, if we would have told you a year ago we're only going to lose 2 or 3 seats, people would have said, forget it, what are you smoking? Second, as you know, there were 25 Senate Democrats up for re-election. 10 of those in states that Donald Trump won. Of those 10 states, Democrats won 6. A majority of senators who ran in states that Donald Trump won in 2016 won in 2018, many by nice margins. And the most amazing fact of all, in 3 states where Democrats ran for the Senate, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, the very states that put President Trump over the top in 2016, not only did our candidates run strong races and win by significant margins, 2 of them double digits, but the president couldn't even set foot in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, and Wisconsin because his presence there was so harmful to Republican Senate candidates. That certainly doesn't bode well for him in 2020. Now, he did make efforts in the reddest of states, states that he won by 19% or more. But let me tell you, you can't win the presidency and you can't run the country by just focusing on a handful of states that you won overwhelmingly. To brag that because he won North Dakota, that makes him a national, strong political presence, especially given in light of what everything else that happened last night, makes no sense. So I think all the crowing that Donald Trump is doing is way overstated. given the map, we had a much better night than he's claiming. And finally, if you can only campaign in the reddest states that you won by 30 or 40 points in the last election, and no one wants you in large parts of America, that doesn't bode well for your political future. That's what I'd say to President Trump. For the president to claim that winning these types of seats in the Senate offsets the devastating losses he faced in the House, governorships, and state legislatures, and not even be able to win a majority of the Senate seats in states he won in 2016 is bad math. It's a nice spin. No one should buy it. So, I know the president just spent an hour and a half yelling at some of you, but also trying to spin the results by talking about how great he is and how great his party did. But if I am him or the Republican Party looking at 2020 and beyond, I'd be very, very nervous about what lies ahead. You're first. Oh.
What are your concerns about that decision, requesting him to resign?
Well, I'd say this. I've just heard the news, but I'd say this. Protecting Mueller and his investigation is paramount. It would create a constitutional crisis if this were a prelude to ending or greatly limiting the Mueller investigation. And I hope President Trump and those he listens to will refrain from that. Now, I want to take, let's see what we should do here. I mean, I know you'll want to have other questions on this, but let's do questions, if we could, first on the subject I talked about, and then on this. And then on this, okay? I'm going to stick to it. Yes.
This too. So,
You'll get your questions on this new recent announcement.
do you regret, did Kavanaugh negatively impact these members who lost last night? Do you regret moving forward and pushing so hard on this nomination?
Okay, the bottom line is we didn't move forward and push forward on this nomination. The president did. He has the right to do it. But I think what we Democrats did is showed the nation that the Republicans want to fill up the bench, and President Trump wants to fill up the bench with judges, justices, who are anti a woman's right to health care, who would cut back on health care, who would side with the radicals on no gun control, who would hurt the rights of women, minorities, voting rights, LGBT rights. And I think that had as much of an effect galvanizing people to vote Democratic as it did to galvanize people to vote Republican. And in the long run, it's going to hurt them far more.
On immigration?
Yes.
Immigration reform. So the president, throughout the campaign, pictured this caravan, migrant caravan, as criminals and people of unknown Middle Eastern descent invading the country, a crisis on the border. First of all, just respond to those statements and what you make of how he used that to gin up his base, and secondly, whether or not there's any chance for immigration reform.
Okay, first question. You know, this president has a tendency to rely on fear, to try and scare people and win elections that way. The repudiation of what happened to him last night shows that it doesn't work with the vast majority of Americans. I think immigration reform is something I've been passionate about for the 30 years I've been in the House and Senate. And I would hope we could, in a bipartisan, smart way, we could get something done. Comprehensive immigration reform, such as Senator McCain and I and the Gang of Eight put together, is something that I would seriously look at and maybe would have a chance in a bipartisan Senate for passing. And there are a bunch of things we'd want to get done: infrastructure, drug prices, but that would be something that would be on my list.
Is it possible
That's
that
I'm going to move on. Yes. Burgess.
Vitriolic language?
I answered that question.
What do you think about the map going into 2020?
Well, the map in 2020 is much better. I think.
Did you need to hold more of these seats to have a better shot?
No, I mean, we'll have a very good shot in 2020. And I think originally the Republicans hoped they could hold us down to 40, 41, and that would ensure in 2020 our map is better, in 2022 our map is even better still. But they didn't do that. We've lost 1, 2, or 3 seats tops.
And what about Bill Nelson in Florida? Do you think he could win there?
You know, there are lots of ballots that have not been counted, from what I'm told, in the hundreds of thousands, and that this election is not a foregone conclusion. In fact, we're in the official recount stage because it's below 0.5%, I believe it is. And I'd say in Arizona, it's not close to over. There are about 600,000 people whose votes haven't been counted, and a lot of them come from counties like Maricopa and Pinal County, which have been Democratic. Yes.
With Republicans picking up seats after campaigning on border security, has anything changed with regards to the border wall? Could you still do a DACA fix for border wall exchange in the lame duck?
Well, as we've seen, the president's a very poor negotiator on those issues. He makes agreements and he backs off. So we're sort of dubious of sitting down with the president and making that kind of exchange again when twice he's shaken hands and then backed off. On the general issue of border security, we've had great discussions in the appropriations process. They've been bipartisan. Leader McConnell, Speaker Ryan, Leader Pelosi, and myself have come to agreements without any muss or fuss, in a very bipartisan way. About 70% of the budget's been passed. There are good agreements on border security and other things that are in the Homeland Security appropriation, which is one of a few more that have to be done. And I would hope that the president wouldn't interfere and we could get something good done.
Can I ask about the Sessions news?
Nope.
Um,
You can, but not yet.
Okay.
In order to win a majority, do Democrats have to win in states beyond just states that were Obama or Clinton states? Right now, I think Tester and Manchin are the only two that would be left in the caucus that have won in states that.
Well, that's not true. There are several others who have won in states that are not.
Oh, John, okay.
There you go. There's one.
But do you need more, and how do you win in those states?
Look, I think our focus, which we decided on early on health care, proved very, very, very beneficial to us because that's the number one issue facing the American people. And by focusing on middle-class issues that affect average voters, such as health care, drug prices, things like that, I think we'll expand our majority. We're delighted that suburbia, which used to be so Republican, is now Democratic. And by the way, suburbia did very well for us, even in states like Missouri and Indiana, where, St. Louis County or Marion County, we did better than we've ever done. And focusing on those types of issues, our coalition is growing while theirs is shrinking. And because in a few states that are very red, that Trump won by a lot, he won a few seats, doesn't undo that fact at all. Yes, then we'll go to subject B, whatever it was.
Mr. Schumer, obviously the 2020 season is going to be heating up soon. Many of your senators are expected to run for the next year or so, obviously. How does that affect your?
Say that again?
2020.
They were giving me a note.
Soon. 2020, where so many of your senators are probably be running for the high office. How does that affect how the Democratic caucus?
Well, look, we've had people interested already, at least according to all the rumors. Our caucus has shown tremendous unity. And just about every single member of our caucus on things like health care, on things like the tax bill, have pulled together. And I expect that to continue. There will be some who are interested in running for president. But so far, it hasn't stood in the way of our caucus unity or getting whatever we have to get done as a caucus. And I think that'll continue.
How many do you expect to take the plunge?
I have no idea. Ask them. Okay, now we'll go to the other subject. You go first.
On the replacement for Attorney General Sessions, are there any requirements or
No.
any
As I
things
told
that
you,
you're looking for?
I'm not going to say much. I'm not going to say much until I read what they said and why. I find the timing very suspect, number one. But number two, our paramount view is that any attorney general, whether this one or another one, should not be able to interfere with the Mueller investigation in any way. They should not be able to end it. They should not be able to limit it. They should not be able to interfere with Mueller going forward and doing what he thinks is the right thing. And that will help guide us as we go through this process.
Considering Republicans just picked up a couple seats here, though, is there anything you, as Democrats, can do to stop a nominee that you...
Well, it wouldn't matter if they picked up a couple of seats, because nominees just need 51 votes. But we would hope, if there's a constitutional crisis, that our Republican colleagues would join us in thwarting the president from creating that crisis. We'll see. We've never known, because thank God we haven't had it so far.
What do you know about
Yes.
bread and
Yes.
bread and butter issues? The president, during his press conference, said he still wants a middle-class tax cut. He would even consider raising corporate tax rates to pay for that. Does that give you any hope of a deal?
Well, look, one of the things Democrats proposed, both House and Senate, was reducing some of the huge tax breaks that went to the wealthiest and corporations and putting it into infrastructure. That's something I hope the president would consider.
And also, Democrats have campaigned on the $15 minimum wage. We haven't heard much about that, but now you have the House. Is there any way that you're going to try to negotiate?
Look, we want better jobs at better pay, and we'll look at many different ways to get there. Okay? Yes.
Question on healthcare. Just now, Leader Pelosi said in the press conference that she was calling on the Trump administration to withdraw their support of the Texas lawsuit to undo Parts of the Affordable Care
I would-
Act as an act of good faith. Would the Senate Democrats support that? And
I would join her in that.
would you call on your Republican counterparts?
Yes. I mean, they say one thing, that they want to keep pre-existing conditions, and on the other hand, they support a lawsuit that would get rid of them. You can't have it both ways. Either come clean, and you don't want to protect pre-existing conditions, or drop the darn lawsuit. Last one. Oh, you went once already. Sorry.
What are your expectations for working with some of the new Republican senators, especially?
Look, I will work with anyone I can to move the country forward, but we're not going to sacrifice our principles. That's it. Thank you, everybody. That's
Can you
it.
define a constitutional crisis, and if that is someone who's appointed who's been critical of the Mueller investigation?
Yeah.